Are low income Americans better off on unemployment than they are working? Probably not going to say what you think here. The answer to that question is yes, they are. Is this ideal? No, it's absolutely not. What should we make of this fact? What we need to make of this fact is that our labor market does not provide enough for the laborers who participate in it. Will there always be people who decide not to participate? Sure. But a majority of people are making what for them is a logical decision. As an example, if I said to you, look, I've got, no, not if I said to you, but if a drug dealer just say came up to you and said, look, I want to do something nice. I feel bad for all I've done that has negatively impacted people. And they said just randomly to you, they just walked up to you on the street and they said, you know what? I'm going to give you $1 million. And I don't know you. You don't know me. This is my way of, trying to uh, overcome all the negativity that I've done to people, random people. Most people, despite the fact that they would probably not be so open about the fact that they would accept the money, fact is, most people would accept that money. They absolutely would accept that money. And a lot of us would say that we have problems with it, but when you're really being honest about it, can you really blame that person? They're not the person who gave out the drugs. I mean, they're just doing it, especially if they kind of really need money. They've never, you know what I mean? Like, can you really blame them? Yeah, you should say, on a kind of a, on at a higher level, you should say, well, you know what, they should really turn down that money. But if you're being honest about it, you really can't blame them. Because most of us know that we'd probably say, like, well, meet me around the corner. But getting back to this observation around low income Americans and them actively making decisions not to participate in the labor market because they make more on unemployment. What this really truly should say to employers is that they need to pay more. They absolutely need. Why do they need to pay more? Yeah, you could talk about the fact that, incomes, have been stagnant, and in a lot of cases it actually been like declining, right? You could make that whole bubbly wobbly argument. But really understand the psychology behind motivation and understand that money is a very unique motivator. Money, in a lot of times, will override other motivational factors. I talked in the previous segment about one of the kind of motivations to get people back to work being them feeling safe and secure about the virus and stuff. Yeah, there are a lot of people who there is no amount of money that you could give them that would make them want to jeopardize their family and their safety and themselves and their safety and their health. But all you have to do is look at when we were as a country in the thick of COVID, and look at the fact that we still had people who were wanting to go to work, and we weren't even offering, in some cases, we weren't offering that hazard pay, but people still showed up for work. Yeah, there's a whole, I love my job. Yeah, there were a lot of those people, but there were also a lot of people who said, look, if I don't work, I don't eat. And that should say something to employers when there are people who, despite the other motivators around the virus itself, vaccinations, health, safety, and security, there are people out there who would, and a significant amount of people, not all, but a significant amount of people who would overlook those other motivational factors and get off their butts and go to work if employers simply paid them more. Now, I've already addressed, and I want to be very clear about this. I've talked several times on this podcast about this conversation of upping the minimum wage to $15. Even though the proposal under which that kind of came about did not mean that would happen instantaneously, like it wouldn't be signed and then the next day, oh, you've got to pay $15 an hour. It would happen over years. The fact still stood that if that had passed at the time when it was originally being proposed, what we would have seen is we would have seen employers in this moment reacting to future conditions, and that would not have been positive. Because of that, despite the fact that I understand and agree wholeheartedly that the minimum wage has to come up, now was not the time to take it to $15 an hour. Now was not the time to have the conversation. So I want to make that very clear because, you know, just because you acknowledge that conditions have to get better does not mean that they have to go to this very specific place. That specific place is not where, in the moment of this pandemic, is not where we need to go. Now, the day after things are great, come back to me. Then ask me. I can guarantee you I'll have a different opinion. But in this moment, we need as much certainty as possible for the markets and for employers. We absolutely have to have that. Speaking about employees, I'm going to say something that a lot of people don't want to hear. Okay. Um, Everyone knows that employees trade time for money. That's not what you don't want to hear. What you don't want to hear is that that is not the most effective way to make money. And actually, in all the ways that people can make money, it is the least effective and efficient way to generate income. Now, it's the thing that a significant majority of Americans do. And quite honestly, I would tell you to blame our society for pushing that instead of entrepreneurship and investing, right? The two things that are very, that are more effective and efficient at generating income, right? That's how those, it's interesting when you hear some people talk, right? You hear some people talk and they talk about, oh, I can't wait to be wealthy one day. And I'm being very honest here, and I'm not saying this to disrespect anybody, but I really on this podcast want to be as open and honest with you guys, right? You guys will hear someone just say, for instance, who works at the DMV talking about, oh, how they can't wait to be financially secure. You are never going to be financially secure by most people's standards. You might have your own personal definition of financial security working at the DMV or being a teacher, right? Those are commendable things to do. We need people at the DMV. We need people as teachers. But are you going to become wealthy? No, you're not, right? When you actually examine some of the people who were most successful in our country, they are not the people that most of us are taught to be. There is this saying, I forget exactly how it goes. For instance, regarding entrepreneurship, it's your A's and B's students. I don't know if I'm saying this exactly correctly, but generally speaking, the quote goes something along the lines of your A's and B's students will end up working for your C students. That is because education may open a lot of doors for you. But what we don't talk about regarding education is that it teaches you to work for somebody else. It teaches you to manage someone else's businesses. It teaches you to work at someone else's schools. Again, I'm not downgrading, but I just think that people need to kind of live in reality here, right? We have to be honest with each other, right? The lies that some of you have been sold around one day you're going to be, and it makes it 10 times worse, by the way, when you see people posting alternate realities on social media. You know, gosh, that's a whole different conversation in itself. But some of you have really been sold this lie of financial security through employment. That is just not true. Just ask people who were used to years and years and years ago having the same employer, where now that's almost unheard of, right? People go from employer to, it used to be like a bad thing to kind of see that. You kind of look at somebody suspicious, like, okay, why can't you kind of, stay with one employer? Now you're looking suspicious kind of at people who kind of do have one single employer, right? Um, Times have totally changed. But the thing that has not changed is that, again, being very blunt here, the life that, for instance, the CEO of the organization, the life that they live is going to be very, very different than the life of the customer service rep, the life of the janitor, right? The life of the teacher, the life, it's going to be very, very different. And again, yes, I do think we do have to have conversations around equality, but you hear examples of, for instance, the increase in CEO wealth compared to your average everyday American. Yeah, there are some disparities there, but don't fool yourself in thinking that working in customer service, you will ever, ever, ever make exactly what your CEO makes. Now, maybe in the beginning when they're just starting out, and because here, and I'm going to be very honest, I get mad, and I've really gone off on a tangent here, and I'm going to say this and then kind of go on about my business. I get mad when I hear that conversation, when it's framed as if business owners are doing something bad for paying themselves more than the actual employees that work for them. Because don't fool yourself, you work for these people. You are trading your time for their money. And you absolutely can take your time and walk away, but understand you won't get that money. But here's the deal, we don't talk about the fact that for many CEOs, many entrepreneurs, many business owners, they go months and years, in a lot of cases, bootstrapping their business, funding it all themselves, or putting their own home on the line so they can not only start the business, but pay you, forsaking time with their children, taking money out of their children's and stuff's mouth to pay you, when all you had to do was show up and you got paid regardless. And even when the business became profitable, most often they still had to wait longer to start paying themselves. Am I saying that for you to feel sorry for business owners? No. But I'm saying that because a lot of people, when they have the conversation around, oh my gosh, employees make so much less than CEOs and business owners, we don't have the conversation around all the sacrifices that business owners had to make. They put their home on the line. They didn't eat. They didn't pay themselves for years, but paid you consistently. So, again, around that conversation, am I saying that we don't need to kind of raise income? Yes, we do. Yes, we do. But don't fool yourself in thinking that as the janitor, you need to demand to be making the same amount as the CEO. Yes, you absolutely make a unique and needed contribution. but the skills that you deliver are not on par with what it took to actually get the company going. So I'm off on a tangent. Let me kind of reel myself back in here. So, look, when I consider that the most effective way to make money is essentially not trading your time for money, which is by means of investing is probably your best way to make money, right? Because as an entrepreneur, until you reach a certain point, you still have to trade your time for money, and a lot of times you're just donating your time because you don't get any money out of it. So anywho, considering that, at the end of the day, all of that considered, employers, they still need laborers, because no vision can manifest on its own, whether it's due to employees being hired and helping out, or it's due to a stroke of luck where that right person comes across at that right time, whether in the form of an investor or some sort of resource for you. Uh, Specifically speaking about employees, employees are still needed by employers. But here's the thing that employers, because I have to be fair here. I have to be fair and balanced, right? Employers, they have to lose this sense of entitlement that they have for cheap labor. Okay? Just kind of think about it for a second. Pretty much in every area of life, if you want something and you can't get it, but you're offering something to get it, if the answer still is no after you make your offer, you have to come back and you have to make a better offer. Think about it. When you buy a home, you put that offer out there. Yeah, I'll give you $350,000 for this. When they tell you no, that's not going to work for us, what do you have to do? Do you just whine and complain and demand that they accept your $350,000 so you can move in that house and have your dreams come to life? No, you have to come back with a better offer. Same for getting a car. When you buy a car, if you say, well, yeah, I like this. I don't know, what does a Kia cost? What, I don't know, $20,000. I don't know. I like this Kia, right? Do you even make Kias? I don't know anymore. I don't know. Do I see them on the road? I'm not that observant. So, anywho, so let me say I'm going to give you $20,000 for this Kia. If they say no, we've upped the price to $25,000, and you have if they tell you no, whining and complaining is not going to help you. Even if you can't come up and meet their demands, you have to come to the table with something better than you were offering, because your offer was rejected. Same deal if you think about, for instance, let's not even think about something that has a set price. Let's talk about, for instance, the flea market, right? You go to the flea market, and at the flea market, you want to get something, and you're like haggling with the person, right? You see a little trinket, and the trinket, there's no price listed, and you say, yeah, I'll pay $5 for this. And they say, no, I think it's worth a little bit more. You don't just stop the negotiations right there and there. Well, maybe you do if you know you can't go above that price, but anyone who negotiates, no, you never start where your max is, right? But you you don't just say, well, um I'm just not even going to do it. Well, again, maybe you do if you don't know how to negotiate, but what I'm getting at here is the fact that if an offer is not working for you, if employers are seeing that they are putting offers out there of X amount of dollars per hour and no one is accepting that offer, why is the expectation that the low wage earners should acquiesce to the demands of the employer rather than the employers acquiescing to the demands of the market, the free market? The thing that we talk about all the time. What about this free market? What about the free market? What about the free market? I've rambled on enough. And before I close, I want to tell you what Bank of America said, because I think they're actually the reasons why I posed the question about low income Americans. And I'm actually going to answer your question here. But before I can get into answering the question, I want to tell you what Bank of America said about low income Americans basically deciding not to work until the unemployment boost was gone. And remember, I earlier said that, hey, um, are they better off? Yeah, they are better off. Bank of America, they said that they expect about 2.5 million Americans are going to rejoin the workforce by the end of summer or early fall, basically when the stimulus benefits go away, specifically those extended unemployment benefits. They believe they end, I believe, in September. And then they said, in addition to that, there's going to be about slightly more than 2 million Americans who are they're going to just take much longer in the job market, or they just may not opt to go back and rejoin the job market at all. Now, one of the things that I want you to notice is that they were absolutely certain in their assumptions and felt comfortable making assumptions about why people aren't initially jumping into the labor market. They're not doing it because they're lazy and they just want to stay and get their unemployment benefits. They did that, but they did not talk about why people, per their expectations, aren't going to rejoin the labor market after the boosts go away. And I want to ask you, why did they decide not to do that? Why did they not decide to make an assumption about those group of people, but only the people who weren't working because of the big bad unemployment boosts? You have to ask yourself, what do they believe? What do they believe? They believe Americans are lazy. Okay, that is a fact. And another fact is that there's not enough cheap employment opportunities to go around. So some people are going to be left out of the market. And that's something that we never really talk about as a society. We never talk about the supports that are available to and for those individuals. What is the solution for those people? Because quite frankly, at this point, they don't have one. Bank of America also talked about there being high risk that the labor participation rate is not going to recover, basically meaning that as many people aren't going to go back to work as they had before. But I want to make it very clear that that's not because Americans are lazy, specifically low income Americans. It's because this is the way that the current system is designed, and no one is being honest about that. This is the perfect opportunity that we can capitalize on to change that system, because the system does not work for those people. And we absolutely have to have politicians that understand this. Because if we're talking about the fact that low income Americans are better off on unemployment, we have to talk about why.